My name is Rachel. I'm 34 and I'm a senior financial analyst at a private equity firm in Chicago. That night, standing in my mother-in-law's dining room, she looked me dead in the eye in front of 12 relatives and said, "We all know why you're really here, Rachel. It certainly isn't for his personality." My husband Dan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. I just smiled, set down my glass, and said, "You're right, it's not." Nobody in that room knew what I meant. Not yet. But before I tell you what happened next, welcome back to Every Story Vault. If stories like this hit close to home, hit subscribe because what happens in the next few minutes might surprise you. Let me take you back to where this actually started, 4 years earlier. I met Dan at a mutual friend's engagement party. He was a high school science teacher, kind, a little awkward, completely unimpressed by money, which in my line of work was rare and honestly refreshing. What Dan didn't advertise, and what I never led with either, was that I'd spent my 20s building a career most people don't see the inside of. I managed portfolios worth more than most people's life savings. I'd made partner track by 30. I drove a used Honda because I didn't need anyone to know that. His mother, Linda, decided who I was within about 90 seconds of meeting me. I showed up to that first dinner in jeans and a blazer, no jewelry, and Linda took one look and asked if I'd found a job yet. I said yes, actually. She nodded like she didn't believe me and changed the subject. That was the pattern for the next 3 years. At Dan's birthday, Linda mentioned twice how expensive it must be dating a man on a teacher's salary. At Christmas, she gave every daughter-in-law a monogrammed gift except me and told everyone it was an oversight. When Dan got a small raise, she pulled him aside and asked, loud enough for me to hear from the next room, if he'd checked that I wasn't just after his benefits. When we got engaged, she asked, in front of his sisters, whether I'd be signing a prenup for his protection. I offered. She acted surprised I even knew what one was. Then came the wedding planning, and with it, Linda's real chance to control the narrative. She tried to cut my guest list in half without asking. She told the venue coordinator directly that she'd be the one actually paying for things that mattered, which wasn't true. Dan and I were covering the wedding entirely ourselves. When I gently corrected her, she laughed and said, "Sure, honey, whatever helps you feel involved." I never corrected her again after that. I just started keeping things to myself. About 8 months into the marriage, everything changed, not because of anything I did, but because of Dan's father. He'd built a small hardware business over 30 years, and it was starting to buckle under supply costs and bad accounting. Linda, for all her opinions about my worth, had never once asked what I actually did for a living beyond something with numbers. She had no idea I specialized in exactly this: restructuring, cash flow, saving businesses that looked like they were already gone. I found out how bad it was by accident. I was at their house one evening and I overheard Linda on the phone with Dan's father's business partner, her voice shaking, saying they might have to sell the building just to cover payroll. She didn't know I was standing in the hallway. I didn't say anything that night, but the next morning I pulled every public filing I could find on the business, went through 3 years of tax documents Dan's father eventually, reluctantly handed over, and built out a full recovery plan, not because anyone asked me to, but because it was the kind of problem I solved for strangers every day, and this time it was family. I put it all into a binder, simple black cover, tabbed sections, my handwriting on the front, options. I brought that binder to Sunday dinner 3 weeks later. Linda was mid-sentence telling one of her sisters that Dan had married beneath his potential financially speaking when I set it on the table. "I think this might help," I said. She opened it like it might be a trap. It wasn't. It was a full restructuring plan, renegotiated supplier terms, a revised payroll schedule, 2 viable buyers for a minority stake if they needed a cash injection, and a projection showing the business breaking even within 14 months if they followed it. Every page had her father's real numbers on it. Every recommendation was something I'd done professionally, dozens of times for companies worth much more than his. The room went quiet. Linda looked up at me, and for the first time in 4 years, she didn't have anything ready to say. "Who are you?" she finally asked. "Rachel Whitfield," I said. "Senior analyst. I restructure companies for a living." I've been doing it for 9 years. I paused. You never asked. Dan's father used that plan almost exactly as written. The business didn't just survive. Within a year, it was healthier than it had been in a decade, and he brought me on formally as a paid consultant, which I still do on the side to this day. Linda never apologized outright. That's not who she is. But something shifted. She started asking me actual questions at dinner. She stopped commenting on Dan's salary like it was the only number that mattered in our house. Last month, she asked my opinion on refinancing her own mortgage, and when I told her, she actually wrote it down. I never brought up the gold digger comment again. I didn't need to. She knows exactly what she said and exactly what it cost her. 4 years of assuming she already knew who I was without ever once asking. Here's what I've learned. People will decide your worth based on what's easiest for them to see. Your job title, your car, your silence in a room. You don't owe anyone a resume to prove them wrong. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply wait until the moment your work speaks for you, louder than anything you could have said yourself. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who never bothered to actually know you, tell me about it in the comments. And if this story hit home, don't forget to subscribe. Carter Story Vault has a lot more where this came from.